You ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other places people like to listen? How do I make money from my podcast? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with great sponsors too, so you get paid for this podcast. What I like about it is starting using it is how easy it is to use. I just upload old episodes of my podcast. I placed it other places, do some editing and tinkering, and voila, that's it. It's that simple. So if you always wanted to start your own podcast, make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start. That's anchor.fm/start to join me in the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. And now, let's get on with the show. You ever felt you're being watched sometimes? Have you ever had a cold shiver run down your spine? Sometimes we go through that. Sometimes we look for answers to questions we don't really truly understand. Like, are we truly alone in the universe? Is there life after death? This world is weird. It gets weirder by the day. And in that weird are questions that we have as curious beings known as humans. Tonight, we look into some of those questions and get a little weird. Because we all are just a tad bit weird. Tonight on Weekend Weird. Welcome to Weekend Weird, the show about the weird and mundane that's out in this world and across this universe. I'm your host, producer, Mr. Everything, and now chairman of the Section 8 Chicago Fire Board, RedNick. I'm back off of taking a sabbatical because I just needed one. And we're joined by a couple of new co-hosts, guests on the show. Mariah.
Hello.
And returning after 2 years. Somewhere in exile, somewhere up in Antarctica. Fighting the good fight for everyone. It's Maddie.
Back in town, back to wreak havoc. Antarctica was really fucking cold. It's 80 degrees where we are now, and I'm into it.
Yeah.
And
we have a fire, Maddie.
We have a fire, and I get to wear my fucking booty shorts and my fucking crop top, so let's go. Let's get into the shit.
Alright, what do you have for us today, Nick?
Oh, man. We got a doozy of a case. Well, as part of my, I told earlier in the season that I was going to do a mini-series within a series dealing with the satanic panic, different cases from the 70s and 80s, and issues pertaining to what they said was takeover by Satan, mass hysteria, and what that means to us today, especially during these times that we're going through, not just COVID, but this parallel universe we were living in since 2016, end of 2016. We were dealing with one of the most expensive cases ever prosecuted in the United States. that led to I count them, 0 convictions. We're talking about the McMartin preschool child molestation case.
Oh, you weren't talking about the war on drugs or, the war against sex work?
No, not right now, not this episode. Good. Coming up in the future episodes on Wicked Weird, the war on drugs. The McMartin trial happened in California during the 80s. It was, again, one of the most expensive prosecutable case in the history of the United States, costing a total of $15 million. That resulted in how many convictions? Absolutely none. 0. It was a daycare sexual abuse case prosecuted by the Los Angeles District Attorney at the time, Ira Renner. Members of the McMartin family who operated a preschool in Manhattan Beach, California, were charged with numerous acts of sexual abuse of children in their care. Accusations were first made in 1983. The arrests and pretrial investigations took place between 1984 and 1987, and the trial ran between 1987 and 1990 and lasted 7 years with a grand total, again, 0 convictions. So, Mariah, since you're the only one that has children.
Well, this is clearly a case of the satanic panic that took the country by hold in the 80s. It was something that everyone who had children at the time was so very concerned about. But based those concerns on absolutely no actual evidence.
Yeah, I mean, flimsy evidence, and we'll get into the evidence throughout the show, but it more than just what this case involved, especially with the satanic panic, this is, again, proving that the justice system in this country is not perfect. Now, these cases have to be of mostly of white working class people, but imagine if there were a different race, how bad it would have been. And still, I mean, when you hear about protests going on now, Black Lives Matter, issues with Latino and Asian communities, it mirrors what happens to them also happens to everyone else. And this case is a pure example of that, of the total railroading that these people get. I mean, there are still some children that are now adults that believe that they were abused by these people. But looking at the evidence, which we'll go over on this episode, it doesn't add up to that. And actually looking at the evidence, some of it is very ridiculous. And clearer heads should have came just like, hey, let's take a second here, let's review this stuff and do some more in-depth. But again, we add into this panic that was going on, the religious right, the justice system, and electoral politics. You get this tornado of shit that happened with his family. So Meredith Maddie, excuse me, I don't know who the hell I'm thinking of, went off into the woods real quick to, I think, go catch Bigfoot. But, Mariah, you ready to get weird on Weekend Weird?
Yeah, I mean, so if we're talking about the satanic panic in the 1980s, it was absolutely something that for a number of people who were immediately involved, it was something so incredible that it completely blew their minds, and they were able to craft this narrative that was horrifying. But once one looked at it from an outside perspective, it was complete bullshit. Complete and total. Bullshit. Complete and total bullshit. It was so fabricated. And there were these things that occurred that these folks who were running this daycare were able to say, hey, so this thing occurred.
Mm-hmm.
But they were able to prep the children who were giving this testimony to actually give the narrative that they desired.
Right.
And thus led to this incredible nationwide satanic panic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're going to get into that. So how did this start? Well, in 1983, a lady named Julie Johnson, who was a mother of one of the children that was going to the preschool in Manhattan Beach, California, reported to police her son had been sodomized by her estranged husband and by the McMartin teacher, Ray Buckley. Ray Buckley was the grandson of the school's founder, Virginia McMartin, and son of Administrator Peggy McMartin Buckley. Johnson's belief that her son had been abused began when her son had painful bowel movements. What happened next is still being disputed. Some sources state at the time Johnson's son denied her suggestion that his preschool teachers had molested him, while others say he confirmed the abuse. In addition, Johnson also made several more accusations, including that people at the daycare had sexual encounters with animals, that Peggy drilled a child under the arms, and Ray flew in the air. Ray Buckley was questioned but was not prosecuted at the time due to lack of evidence. The police then sent a form letter to 200 parents of the students of McMartin School, saying their children might have been abused and asking the parents to question their children. I have the letter in front of me. Here's the text. Dear parent, this is dated September 8, 1983. This department is conducting a criminal investigation involving child molestation. Ray Buckley, an employee of Virginia McMartin's preschool, was arrested September 7, 1983 by this department. The following procedure is obvious an unpleasant one, but to protect the rights of your children as well as the rights of the accused. This inquiry is necessary for a complete investigation. Records indicate that your child has been or is currently a student at the preschool. We are asking your assistance in this continuing this investigation. Please question your child to see if he or she has been a witness to any crime or he or she had been a victim. Our investigation indicates that possible criminal acts include oral sex, fondling of genitals, buttocks, and chest area, the sodomy, and possibly committed under the pretense of taking the child's temperature. Also, photos may have been taken of children without their clothing. Any information from your child regarding having ever observed Ray Buckley to leave a classroom alone with a child during any nap period, or if they ever observed Ray Buckley tie up a child is important. Please complete the enclosed information form and return it to this department in this closed stamped return envelope as soon as possible. We'll contact you if circumstances dictate the same. We ask that you please keep this investigation strictly confidential because of the nature of the charges and the highly emotional effect they may have on our community. Please do not discuss the investigation with anyone outside your immediate family. Do not contact or discuss the investigation with Raymond Buckley and any members of the accused defendant's family or employees connected with the McMartin School. Does that sound normal? Do they write letters? Term police departments do that? I never heard of them doing such a thing. I could be wrong, but like something important is this: when they try to interview people individually without having this potentially being leaked to the media. I don't know, Mariah. Any thoughts?
I would assume that at that point a school would reach out to parents individually in order to interview both parents and their children.
Mm-hmm. So sending a letter. Yeah, that's,
right. This letter seems rather formal and completely inappropriate as to the severity of the charges that are being brought.
Yeah, and also like the accusations provided by Ms. Johnson is saying that Ray flew in the air and Peggy drilled a child under the arms. Wouldn't people like notice that shit? Like, first of all, you have to second guess yourself if you're a detective or a police officer. When even if a child said, "Hey, this person touched me, but also flew in the air," wouldn't you think twice about like, "Whoa, hold on, what?" Because that's just what.
They made accusations that teachers flew in the air on brooms, which is